and really didn't have a purpose. I was doing it because I thought that's what would get me ahead. And I'm 49 years old now. It was just maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I realized I wasn't chasing the money, I was chasing the time freedom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Moeller, and on this podcast, we will be interviewing guests that have made their mark in real estate, in business, and in other areas of life. Listening to podcasts myself has helped me in so many different ways and continues to do so. If you're a real estate investor or an entrepreneur, or aspiring to be either, or just someone that wants to learn, you've come to the right place. An easy way to have an impact is to share this episode with friends or family, provide a review, or just spread the word. We greatly appreciate it, and now let's get to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. Very excited for this week's guest, a local legend from Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, Ash Patel. Ash, how are you doing today?
Phil, doing great, man. Excited for this conversation.
Yeah, me too. We were just talking on the pre-show about just a lot of the names, familiar faces that we know through the industry. So we were to catch up a little bit, but our listeners, Ash, commercial real estate investors. It's funny, his background, he's pointing out, it says invest beyond multifamily, which means everything but multifamily. So if we're in a fight on the air today, it's only virtual, and we're still getting along. All joking aside, a lot of experience in a lot of different asset classes in real estate, over 10 years, but also mentors and coaches. And I love his his tagline, like CRE Investor, mentor, coach, and just love helping others succeed. And we talked about that a little bit too. So I want to get into that later. But before we do, kind of how did we get to where we are today, Ash?
Yeah, Phil. So took the traditional route, like a lot of your listeners, college, corporate job, 15 years of that, and always had a side hustle trying to get out of that 9 to 5. And every time I try to quit my job, I sold myself out because they would come back, they'd offer me a promotion, a raise, an assistant, and I would take the easy way out, right? Finally, around 2010, 2009, actually, I found my first real estate property. And I didn't know anything about real estate, right? I knew that there was a great way to offset taxes, knew nothing about it. My wife and I were W-2 earners, wrote a big check to the IRS every April 15th. And I figured, okay, let's buy some real estate and figure out this tax thing. So ended up buying a mixed use building in a college town for a couple reasons. One, it's what I could afford. It was $230,000. And two, the first floor had a grocery store that basically just sold beer to college kids right in the center of campus, and it had college apartments above there. So I got in there, rehabbed the apartments, and I saw where the commercial tenant actually replaced their entire HVAC system, 30 grand on their dime. Meanwhile, my college students are kicking holes in the walls, clogging their sinks and toilets. And I thought, why would anybody do residential when you can do commercial? Right. So, funny story. I was out there and unclogging a tenant's toilet. I look out on the roof of the store. There's an HVAC company replacing all the rooftop units. And I went downstairs in a bit of a panic, thinking, is this going to cost me money? And I asked the store owner what's going on. He said, Ash, our AC went out, so we're replacing the entire HVAC system. And it blew my mind, right? Never even asked, called, hey, can I get some money? Nothing. Just went ahead, put 30 grand into my building. As I'm walking out that day of his store, he stops me. He says, Ash, do you mind if we remodel our bathroom? And I'm like, oh, is this real life? Like, by all means, please have at it. And literally quit my job, became a full-time commercial real estate investor, went on to buy everything from office, retail, industrial, medical, bars, restaurants, mixed-use buildings, did ground up development. So asset agnostic, as long as there's no residential tenants in the building. And I'll make the exception for mixed use buildings where it's a combination of commercial and residential.
And the mixed use gives you enough residential to remind you why you don't want to do a lot of
You're not
residential. Maybe.
kidding. Every time I buy a mixed use building, I ask myself, why did I do this? Because we're
I,
not apartment operators, right? I can't compete with you guys.
Yeah,
So
and I
that's
can't
not my
compete. and I
Yeah.
can't compete with you on the commercial stuff. And we have a commercial, and it's not that one's right or wrong. It's what do you know? And I grew up in multifamily. You grew up in commercial. You know it. You've learned it, for the last decade and more. So you're so far ahead of me. So I'm gonna stay focused on what I'm doing, and you do the same, and then we can still be friends. Okay.
This is good. We just agreed on something.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a good start to a
that'll be the last
podcast.
time. You said something about the corporate job, and I wanna you said you kept taking the easy way, and I wanna make that a bigger subject a little bit. So, like, what does that mean, and where are we society, you, whomever, where are we doing that still today, maybe?
This was in the early 2000s when it started. So there was a lot of societal pressure for having a steady job, a career to focus on, everything from getting a loan to buy a house to, when you go out with your friends, you found out this person got promoted, this person's a VP. It's just a lot, being a solo entrepreneur just didn't have the same appeal that it does today. And I think with social media, now it's cool to do that, right? But back
Mhm.
then, the safe path was to just have a corporate job, work a lot of years, get that 401k built up. And, I did it because I thought I wanted financial freedom. I thought I wanted the money. So that's why I always had these side hustles, worked a lot of hours after my 9 to 5, and I had the money, but it didn't change anything. No more satisfaction. I didn't do anything with the money. And I realized every time I tried to quit and they made me a better offer, that the money didn't really motivate me. I just wanted to stop working 18-hour days on my corporate job and the side hustle put together. So every time I took their offer, it was nice, a sigh of relief. And I just had my 9 to 5 to focus on. And, it was just a matter of months until I started another side hustle and really didn't have a purpose. I was doing it because I thought that's what would get me ahead. And I'm 49 years old now. It was just maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I realized I wasn't chasing the money, I was chasing the time freedom.
Yeah, and I wanna come back to the you didn't have a purpose, and just expand on that, but I wrote down before, like, just I think there's the thing that gets people started a lot, I think, is the phrase or the term financial freedom, and then there's an evolution where they learn that maybe that's not what we were looking for. Of course, we want that, but it's what does that give us, and does it give us the time freedom? And I'm here to say, whether you're in a corporate role or a full-time real estate investor, you may or may not. Like, corporate role, you probably don't have the time freedom. Full-time real estate investor, you may or may not have the time freedom. It's really, no matter what you do, being intentional, excuse me, about how you manage your time. So do you realize you wanted time freedom, and that was the purpose, or what, and did that purpose change over time as well?
When I had the 9 to 5, I thought the purpose was don't work for the man anymore. Control your fate, your own destiny. And again, I got a taste of that. And it's really, I was working a lot. All the side hustles that I had, I would work every hour I had free. So, for whatever reason, it wasn't satisfying. Working on my own, working for myself really wasn't the goal. I thought it was. And that's what guided me for a lot of those years. Um, Even after we were financially independent, so to speak, still lacked some satisfaction. And it was time freedom. When I can control my day, I still work a lot, but it's by choice, right?
Yeah. I was just
And
having a conversation earlier. Like, I just, I don't know if this is an entrepreneurial thing. Maybe this is a me thing. Like, I just don't like to be told what to do. And that's a problem. That's probably a negative, but that also means I don't like to be told what I have to do with my time and my schedule. I want to be able to control that. Maybe it's my controlling nature, but I want that time freedom and time flexibility to just, yeah, control it myself. And it sounds like you were similar.
correct.
So the other thing I guess I talked about, like, if for the listeners, if your initial purpose is you think it's financial freedom, you might need to get to that point to realize what the next thing is. And even time freedom, I think there's this evolution. Okay. So now you have time freedom, so to say, but you work a lot. So why do you work a lot now?
Love commercial real estate. I'll never stop doing it, right? I'll never retire. I'll never hang up my boots. Um, it's just a lot of fun. Great people that I get to interact with, people that I mentor, people that I work with. It's just a tremendous amount of fun. So
Awesome.
it's how I choose to spend my day, right?
Yep.
It's it's a lot of fun.
And I think it's
And
more fun because you're getting to you're choosing it. So inherently, it's just your attitude, your approach to it is probably better as well.
yeah, like you said, Phil, no one's telling me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. So I want to, you did the intro and you talked about 10 years in 10 seconds or so, or a minute, but throughout that path, inevitably there was a lot of challenges, a lot of setbacks, a lot of mindset shifts, things like that. So I want to hear more about that. Fears, like what were some major lessons, ahas, mindset shifts that you had that like flipped the direction you were going maybe?
I would say the biggest one is getting out of my comfort zone. I never had mentors. And I to this day, I don't know a lot of people that do what I do in all these different asset classes, right? I'm sure they're out there, but um, I've just never found anybody that I can use as a mentor specifically for what I do. Now, I've hired coaches. I've got really good friends in multifamily that are very successful, and we pass knowledge back and forth. But the biggest thing you hit on was mindset shifts, right? So it's funny in the corporate world, I managed entire departments and I managed people across the Midwest. But when I started working on my own in real estate, I was very hesitant in hiring somebody. I had a coach that I hired. He's like, you need at least 3 people on your staff. And you know what my biggest fear was for hiring somebody was they would either come in here and they'd see how disorganized I am and they would just walk out. Or two, even worse, they would come in, they would organize everything, get me back on track, up to date, and I'd have no more work for them. And how silly are those two fears, right? For anyone that's hired somebody or anybody halfway intelligent would know those are silly. But I hired my first person and it was a game changer, right? Finally, I started getting towards that path of time freedom. And I remember she's actually sitting next to me now, but there was a day shortly after I hired her where I had nothing to do. Everything that was on my list of things to do was offloaded to her. And it was an amazing feeling for the first time ever. Like I wasn't behind, right? So then hired more. Um, so that was, one big mindset shift. The other one was raising capital. For 10 years, I was so afraid of raising capital, taking somebody else's money. What if I lose it? What if the deal goes south? What if, right? And it wasn't until I saw a lot of my high net worth friends investing in bars, restaurants, marijuana companies, crypto coins, and none of them were making a return. They were
Yeah.
losing their money. So I finally, that's what shifted my mindset and thinking if I let them into my deals, they would actually get a return on their money for the first time ever with an exotic, so to speak, investment. So that enabled me to take down much larger deals and cultivate a network of investors to have them come along with us for the ride. So those were
So
the two biggest.
Um, I don't know. I think you were talking about yourself and not me that entire last 3 minutes. But I like so first the fear of hiring. So we're hiring. A lot of our management is third party in different locations, but then we have some in-house management too. So the third party manages the team and the contractors. Then in-house we have a third party, but we're hiring a full-time maintenance person here come Monday and talk about the. I want to make sure we show how organized we are because we're not perfect on everything, and then like hey, how like what's our runway on how much work we have? And literally those two things, and they're silly. I mean, you called me silly when you were talking. There's like that's ridiculous, right? So and but we've also hired management personnel and other team members that have been completely game changing. I had the same fears for those folks, and they're not real, right? They're not founded in anything. And then the topic on capital, I had the same, I think a lot of our listeners maybe can relate to something like if there's something you've been thinking about for a long time, but you're worried about what other people will think. I might lose their money. I'm like, what are they going to, they're investing in other stuff. Am I organized enough? Am I good enough? You're worried. You shifted from worrying about what will happen and how you will be perceived. And you flipped from, no, I can help them because this is a better investment vehicle than what they have today. And for me, even launching the podcast, I forever thought like, what are people going to think of me? How do I feel about this? But then it's like, no, there are people that want to listen, and we appreciate you, by the way, but they want to listen, they want to learn. And I can't let the people that I'm worried about what they think of me not allow me to help the other people. Like I have let ego get in my way. And it sounds like I don't want to say ego, but you had that shift from what will they think of me to how can I help them?
I think you're right. Um, Tim Ferriss did a great talk on identifying your failures. And what I tell people is figure out your failure and walk through it. Like spend a couple hours thinking about if you lose investor capital, what will those conversations look like and play them out in your mind. How will you recover? How will you make it right? What will you do in the future? Are you going to lose that friendship? Play all of that out
Yep.
and never raise capital until you're an absolute expert in what you're doing. I hate the term OPM, right? I see it on hats,
Yeah.
t-shirts, and I see people brag that they don't need their own money, they have OPM. Investor capital, other people's money, is sacred. And if you can't regard it as such, and if you're not confident, more confident in someone else's capital than your own, because losing your own is part of the game, but losing an investor's capital, this is money that they relied on for their family, their future.
Yep.
You have to be an expert before you raise money from somebody else. And if you're not an expert, put together a team of experts that can ensure your success.
Yep. And I think this topic of, identifying your failures and your fear, another topic, like what were your fears along the way? You talked about them, so I'm not going to ask it. But for our listeners, this is a real estate topic and a non-real estate topic. I've been thinking about this other type of side hustle. I've been thinking about doing this other thing personally for a I've been thinking about running a half marathon. It doesn't matter what it is, just identify and sit with those fears and understand what they really are and what they really might become. But if you really are wanting to do that, eventually you have to jump over the hurdle. Now, don't put other people, as you said, other people's money, that term, don't put that money at risk to overcome your fear. You're also saying, but I just think this is such an important topic again, identifying your fears, no matter what that is.
Yeah.
So I'll have to
Phil,
check
do
that
you
out.
have an accountability partner?
I'm in a group where we meet every single Monday and we talk through on a weekly basis what are our wins from the week and challenges upcoming.
How big is that group?
Four people.
Okay. I like that. My advice to people that I
Yeah.
give is groups of two or no more than three. And the reason for that is I'm really good at diverting. So if I'm in an accountability group with four people and I didn't meet my goal or did what I was going to, I didn't do what I said I was going to do, I could very easily be like, you know what? It was a big weekend, holiday weekend. Phil, what about you, man? How are you doing? Like I'm good at diverting, right? So for me, I have a one-on-one accountability partner that can call out my BS. He knows me very well. So I think for your audience, having an accountability partner, and it cannot be a spouse or a best friend because they're going to love you unconditionally. They're not going to push you as they should, but maybe a professional colleague, somebody that you would be disappointed, somebody that you don't want to disappoint,
Yep.
right? I think that having an accountability partner, I've paired a lot of people up and it's been game changing. And the benefit of the one on one is you can get into some more intimate things, right? Things like, I wanted to spend more time with my kids and I didn't. Or, I'm trying to lose 10 pounds and I'm failing. You might not be comfortable sharing that in a bigger group, right?
Yep.
But a one on one where both people share their struggles, their wins, their challenges, I think is immensely helpful.
Yeah. And what I like is you said you kind of gave the guidance of, maybe pick someone professional, not that you're too close to, but you didn't say keep the accountability to only professional items, only professional goals. You referenced, a couple of different personal examples in other areas of life too. And for me, I talk a lot about association, but I don't use the word accountability or accountability partner as much. And it's a really important part of association, like having someone, okay, now you set your goals, but then you share those and say, okay, hold me accountable to these. I just really like a lot. So um what you talked about coaching mentors, who has been really influential in your path, like, whether that's an accountability partner or somebody else?
Do you know Joe Fairless? I'm sure you do, right?
I do.
I've known Joe since about 2015, so about 10 years. And I would hope that I would have done this without him. But one of the things that I love about him, he gives away all of his knowledge. He wrote a 400-page book that is essentially the Bible of multifamily syndication. And I've interviewed people for his podcast where they've simply read his book and have become apartment syndicators. So I love the fact that he gives away all of his knowledge, will help anybody at any time. And again, I'm hoping I would have done that without him, but it's certainly good footsteps to follow in. So
Yeah.
he's been incredibly influential.
Yeah. And I think if you go back to kind of you love what you're doing. I would suspect that you love what you're doing, you love commercial real estate, but you also spend a lot of time, I think, within commercial real estate, mentoring, teaching, coaching, helping, podcasts, things like this, generous with your time to come on here to impact people. And you may get nothing out of this, right? A lot of times you won't, but you learn that mindset, whether it was natural or you learned it from Joe, but just giving away knowledge, it's just the right thing to do. And if it comes back, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. But it's rewarding for yourself too. So I love the thought process.
It is the most rewarding thing I've ever done professionally is mentoring others, right? But I'm the guy, when my lawn guy shows up, I ask him what his goals are. Why aren't you expanding? I'll give him a marketing plan of how he can get bigger. Like I literally want to help everybody, right? As long as you're willing to put the effort in. So years ago, I offered to mentor people on social media. I'd put it out there. People would call me up and I'd get calls from people saying, "Hey, Ash, yeah, I've been meaning to get with you, but I just haven't had time." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. Like, you're telling me you don't have time to get with me, but you're calling me. Great start, but let's keep going." They're like, "Yeah, I want to do what you do." I'm like, "What is it that you think I do?" And they're like, "Oh, you make that mailbox money." And I'm like, "Okay, so you have no idea what it is that I do, right?" And I would still help them. I would spend hours and hours with people. And it finally got to a point where, there was two people that wanted to start an HR consulting company. I put together an entire business plan, took a week. And a couple weeks later, I'm like, "Hey, following up, how are you guys doing with the consulting company?" "Oh, no, we decided we're not going to do it anymore." And here I am, just wasted a ton of time, right? So then I made this rule where anybody that wants my help or mentorship, you have to do one simple homework assignment, and that is find me three commercial deals. I don't care if they're good or bad. Tell me what you like and dislike about them. There's no right or wrong answers. I just want to know that you put 10 minutes of effort into it. And Phil, literally 99% of people did not take that first step.
Right. And someone could say, well, just help them. But I, I want to help people, but I want to make sure they're ready to be helped, willing to be helped. And honestly, the other thing I think is from a ripple effect perspective, if you only have so much time. You can't help everybody. I mean, you physically don't have the time to help everybody. Now, maybe there's different forms and platforms, but we won't get into that. But the point is, if you're saying yes to those people that are 90% and aren't going to be committed, you're saying no to someone else. And then if you're screening the people you're helping, they're probably going to have that mindset. They're going to take action, and the ripple effect, they'll probably help others as well. So I think a filtering, I was actually going to ask, like, how do you manage all this? And I like the rule and kind of the homework assignment to get the discussion.
It's a game changer. And, when I had the time to help everybody, I would. And I think now it's a bit of lack of time and tons of frustration from people that I try to help that took no action.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple formula. If you give me 10 minutes, I'll give you the world.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. And honestly, I need to think about that because I try to provide my time wherever I can or respond to emails or questions, and it can become a little bit overwhelming. I like the idea of doing it as much as possible, but it can get to be um a lot. So
Yeah,
I'll keep trying to figure it out. Go ahead.
but you know what? I still, my Calendly link is out there. I'll still take anybody's call. Recently, I had this call with this kid who just graduated college, started working for a real estate company in New York, and he schedules time with me. And I was on a long road trip, so he doesn't show up to my Zoom call that he scheduled. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna get a hold of this guy. So I track his number down. I call him. I'm like, hey, we had a Zoom call 20 minutes ago. He's like, oh yeah, man, I forgot. I'm like, well, you got me now. So I have 15 minutes. What can I do for you? And he starts telling me, he starts asking me questions. And I'm like, you don't know anything about me, do you? Like, you didn't research me. How did you find me? He's like, oh, this other guy told me to reach out to you. So I did. Have a little bit of respect, right? I researched everything I could about him. I told him, I know you just graduated Stanford. You're working for this company in New York. You're doing real estate in this capacity. And he was blown away. But yet he took no time to research me or how to add value to me, right? Whenever you want somebody's time, see how you can add value to them.
Yeah.
So don't be that guy.
Yeah.
Anybody who calls me that books a call with me, I make sure I research them,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It just shows respect.
Agreed 100%. Well, first of all, in the real estate space, and maybe this is, like I mentioned on the pre-show, there's a couple of people we got like similar connections, and they're just generally generous people with their time. Is this a real estate industry thought process to like network and connect and serve and help people? Like I feel like or maybe it's the successful people within real estate are trying to do that a lot. We're trying to create that community here too. But do you think this is a real estate because people might listen to podcasts, read more network? Is this just the network maybe we're in? Or is it, no, this is everywhere? What do you think of
What?
that?
No, what a great question. We are playing in the friendliest non-contact sport ever, real estate, right? Talk to any business owner, see if they have a bigger pockets or podcast to help their businesses where people truly want others to get ahead. Every business owner that I know, they'll tell me their competitors are gunning for them. They have a target on their back. We play in a non-contact sport where everybody wants to see everybody win. It
Yeah.
is absolutely unique,
Yeah.
right? So we're very fortunate in that because if we were starting a car wash, a bakery, a pizza place, you've got competitors left and right. There's people that want to put you out of business
Hmm.
because you're hurting them. So real estate people have an abundance mentality,
Yeah.
right? I've known a few business owners that had competitors who all came together. And for example, my buddy owns a bowling alley. Formed a group with all the Ohio bowling owners, and their mentality was abundance. It was what's good for bowling is good for all of us. So let's all work together. But most businesses are not like that. Real estate is incredibly friendly.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to help everybody, right? Now, I think when you achieve a certain level of success, getting your own deals done doesn't bring the level of satisfaction that it did before. If you made X number of dollars on a deal, and if that was a game changing dollar amount, that's very exciting. Once you get to a certain point, that excitement wears off, right? It's fun. Certain aspects are fun. The negotiating could be fun. Actually, getting the deal inked on a contract could be fun. But having somebody that you mentor find a life-changing deal, you
Yeah.
get to share in that. Like that excitement, it brings you back.
Yeah. I like that. How do you do that with do you have an approach to change, having a big impact on team member? Like, so you talked about hiring, but what is your approach with your team on how to really energize them and like shift their, I don't know, like just like a first deal for someone you're mentoring? How do you manage that with your team?
First, you make every day fun and different, right? They've got to be excited. They've got to be passionate about it too. And they have to have their own why. I can't help them with that. So anybody that I mentor, um, if they don't have a why that's going to drive them through months and months of searching for deals, it's just not going to work.
Yeah. Agreed.
You can only do so much.
Yeah, one of our core values is be purposeful, and I just like the thought of having the conversation. Like if we're not aligned on what we're doing and why we're doing it, like, yes, this place is for you, or maybe it's not. Like it creates that conversation if we need to. So we have an awesome team right now, and we're like really aligned. We've created these core values together, but I really like that. The other thing, just to close out the abundance mindset, abundance mentality within the real estate space. You referenced the bowling example, and you said most other businesses don't have this approach. That doesn't mean it's still the right approach. If you are the leader in that space, it is going to create, like if you're a leader in a bowling space or an office space or a whatever restaurant, whatever you name the industry, if you bring quote competitors together, the goal is not to squeeze what you can out of the pie. Of course, you want to do that. Let's make the pie bigger. And if you have an abundance mindset, if you align with others in the space, you can make the overall industry bigger, market bigger, and those quote competitors. Maybe you can, share resources, share people, share business. So, just the abundance mindset. Even though most industries don't do it, in my opinion, I feel very strongly because I've seen how it works within real estate. It is the right way to go, I think.
Phil, bars are a great example of this, right? So if there's a couple bars on a street and somebody applies for a liquor license to open an additional bar on that street, those owners will be at the city council meeting fighting it.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible mindset.
Hmm.
Why not create a bar district? Let's make this an entertainment area. More the merrier. People are just so close-minded when it
Yep.
comes to looking at competitors, not as allies.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the phrase a rising tide
Yeah.
raises all ships, I think, or lifts all ships. So, Ash, I want to ask you if you really just step back and reflect. We talk about a lot of different things within real estate, just great things you're doing. But if you really step back, reflect, think about what you're doing, how does what you do, how does it make you feel?
Fulfilled for sure. Um, it's great. My wife was able to retire this summer. That was phenomenal. Game changer for our whole family, right? Um, really just comes down to being fulfilled and having fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Man, the word fulfill, like if you can say that, like if you can say that for our listeners, if you can say that for what you're doing, that is a really cool thing to say. And I think if you can't, or maybe to say it differently, because I've asked this question to a lot of people, but I think to the listeners right now, like, how does what you do, how does it make you feel? And if you can't give a good answer like Ash did here, I think just think about that a little bit more. Write on it. Think about options. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, and to your audience, look, for 15 years, I hated going to work every day, but somehow I lied to myself. And when people ask, I'd say, oh, I love my job. And that's one of the biggest lies you'll ever hear. I love my job. Anybody who ever says that, ask them if they won the lottery, would they continue working for free because they love it? Absolutely not. It's a necessary evil, but most people don't love their job like they claim they do.
Yeah. Yep. Um, and again, I think it goes back to finding purpose with what you're doing, right? Is that financial purpose, time purpose, or influence, impact on people purpose, right? There's a lot of different reasons for it. Um, but I think it's a good filtering. Like if you won the lottery, are you purposeful in what you're doing in your job? And if you're not going to keep working. If you are, then you might keep working. And maybe you'll adjust the hours or something because you can, but I think just being purposeful about what you're doing is important. What do you think has been your key factor to success in my question and fulfillment? What has been the key to that?
Factors for success is probably thinking outside the box. So early on, when I started investing in real estate, didn't have a ton of money. So I would buy vacant buildings. I would buy buildings that the developer ran out of money and finish them. I would buy the properties that nobody else wanted and just thought differently about them, right? Think outside the box. And even my lender at the time was like, why in the world would you ever buy this? and just make it work. So work harder than anybody else. Think outside the box.
Awesome. Awesome.
In commercial real estate, unlike a lot of other asset classes, creativity wins,
Yeah.
right? Multifamily, there's a playbook written. Follow the playbook, be creative. But with commercial, seeing something that nobody else sees, whether it's in a listing, a lease, a property, a vacancy, just think differently.
Yeah. I can relate to the 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 creativity and even then the experience within commercial real estate. Like the more experience you have, the more different things you've seen done, different ways they've been done, different types of tenants you can get in, different type of tenants that might work. Like your knowledge base, I would suspect compounds so much more over time as you just see a lot of different things. So that's a different perspective that I had not thought of before, but I definitely think just being like creativity in multifamily, a lot of times there's some creativity, but it's about operations and executions a lot of times. So what has been the most impactful book that you have read?
Rocket fuel. And I'll tell you
Um,
why.
yeah, go ahead. Not quite, but we're doing it right.
Yeah,
We're rolling it out as we speak, and
yeah.
rocket fuel's a great place to start. Go ahead.
Rocket fuel because I remember in my corporate days, I would see people that had clean desks. Every morning they started out with a clean desk. Before they left work, their desk was clean. They would focus, they would do one thing at a time, and they would see everything through. I was like a whirlwind. I'd have 10 different things started, probably not finish them all, not give them enough attention. And my desk was just a disaster. And like New Year's resolutions every year, I'd be like, okay, this year my desk is going to be clean. I could never do it. It might last a couple days. So most of my life, I thought that was a detriment. And when I read the book Rocket Fuel, I learned that my job isn't to see things through, it's to be a visionary. Get an integrator working with me that can take my crazy ideas and run with them, right? My job is to set the vision, be creative, solve problems, but not to focus on one task at a time. So anybody, that is struggling, they think they have ADHD or can't focus on one thing, they're scatterbrained. It's actually a gift. It's a superpower. So read that book. It's very impactful if that's you.
Yeah. And I see other people and other business owners that I can see, like I'll try to explain it to them, but I can see the visionary mindset and they see it as such a negative because they haven't figured out how to get it to execution. They don't have that integrator piece there. So they get frustrated or other people think like sometimes people might look at me like Phil doesn't get a lot done. It's because I got 10 things going on and I have ideas, but I don't have the systems and processes and people to get them done for me. Yes, I get things done, but my team is way like when you start to hire people too, I've because I've hired people and good people, I see how they execute and get things done way better than I do. So the book was context for me and helped me understand it. But then when I hired people, it helped out even more. So I mean, if how Ash described that is you, yeah, the book Rocket Fuel is excellent. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you and I would not do well if we were just a one-man shop, right? Because
Right.
nothing would get done.
Yeah.
A lot would get done, but things could be better. They could be executed better. The follow through could be better. Timing could be better. That's why we need integrators with us.
Yeah. Actually, it's interesting because I just thought of this, but my wife helped manage our properties, our first, 20 or 30 doors, whatever it was. If I would have done that on my own, it would have drove me crazy. I would have never been, I just wouldn't have been able to do it. But she just got things done. She just executed because you might not be able to hire the integrator when you're just starting. Again, real estate business, whatever it is, you can't just maybe hire that person right away. But going back to your other point, get creative as to how you can get those tasks done too. So I mean, the Rocket Fuel is part of the whole kind of, I'll say, book series from Gino Wickman. There's Get a Grip, there's Traction, there's Rocket Fuel, but Rocket Fuel really it does a good job of explaining maybe who you are as an individual and what you're good at. So I think that's a great place to start. That whole book series is good. So I really appreciate it. Ash, this has been so much, so good, so much wisdom. real estate, commercial real estate. We'll agree to disagree on multifamily and commercial. I know you're buying the mixed use because you just love a little bit of multifamily. So, and I'm going to put you on mute so you can't respond to that. I'm just kidding. But Ash, I really appreciate you bringing the value to our listeners today. Thank you so much.
Do you mind if I ask you a question?
It depends. I still control. Yeah, go ahead.
You've got a phenomenal mindset. You're a young guy. Where did that come from?
Um, Thank you. I think just core values growing up inherently in family, the community we're from, but then also at a very young age, whatever, when I was in my low 20s, I really started reading books. And then even in my 30s, I started really being intentional about networking with others to try to grow. So I think I've just had a personal development and growth mindset for a while that has hopefully helped some.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And this was a phenomenal conversation. So thank you for that as well.
I'm going to ask you how our listeners can find out more about you, but first, you have a phenomenal mindset. So where did that come from?
Making every mistake you can possibly imagine.
Oh, I like that.
This came with me kicking and screaming, right? Even though I had people direct me or try to help me direct me, um, none of this came easy. It all just came from making mistakes
I love
and
it.
a lot of wasted time and effort. So I learned it the hard way.
Yeah. I talk about different pillars of success, and I just answered the question with education and association, but the third one is courage and taking action is another one. And you just said that is you can like you can educate yourself, associate with others, have accountability partners until you're blue in the face. But if you don't take action, if you're not willing to make some mistakes and you don't go do it, you're not gonna learn from the education association. You got to combine all those things together, I think. So Ash, we make a great team. I really appreciate it. How can our listeners find out more about you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. You can go to investbeyondmultifamily.com. You can book a call with me. Um, yeah, if I can help one of your listeners, happy to do it.
Ash, again, thank you so much. You've brought a lot of wisdom, and I appreciate the question and turning it. You're a podcast host, so it shouldn't surprise me. For the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast, signing off. Thank you for listening to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful. If you know current or aspiring investors or entrepreneurs or anyone that would benefit from today's episode, we appreciate you sharing it with them, or better yet, providing us a 5-star review. To learn more about Moeller Real Estate, visit our website at www.moellerre.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter or local events via our website. In closing, I encourage you to be purposeful in all areas of life, educate yourself, network with others that have been successful, take action, and lead. Thank you.